Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. I am just sitting out here enjoying the overcast but mild weather. Just fixed myself a cup of coffee. So there's a bit of a homesteader vlogging challenge, or tag I suppose you could call it, that's been going around. Off the top of my head I cannot now remember who it was who originated it, but I will put that up here somewhere. I'll look it up and see who it was again. But I originally saw it over at Roots and Refuge, and the discussion was the 5 reasons why you chose to homestead. And you know, I've talked about it in the past, some of the reasons why I choose to live this way, why Mr. Smith and I choose to live this way, even though he still works. He's a contractor and he's got a job that he commutes to, but we chose to settle out here in the country and have some peace and quiet and all of that after 25 years of Army life. And this is definitely what we both want. So I just want to share the 5 reasons, or the first 5 reasons that come to mind for me as to why this lifestyle has such a draw for me. First of all, I did not grow up in the country. I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't grow up in that type of environment. But my grandma Ingalls lived out in the country, and when I was very, very little, I remember actually going to her mom's house, and her mom's house was a working farm. I remember my great aunt taking me out into the chicken coop to collect eggs, and I remember being afraid to stick my hand under the chickens because I was sure that the hens were going to be upset that I was taking their eggs. I remember seeing the little chicks they had under the brooder lights and everything. And you know, while my grandmother didn't have a farm, I spent a lot of time at her house out in the country surrounded by farms. And I remember going right down the road to a farmer who had horses, and occasionally he would let me ride, which I thought was, you know, just the ultimate, you know, what little girl doesn't think riding a horse is the best thing ever? And I did that every so often until one day I went over there, I snuck over there and rode a horse without getting permission from my parents and lost my glasses. Yep, that was the last time I was allowed to go to the farm down the road and ride horses. But my grandmother always had a humongous garden. She would can and preserve everything, and I just always felt the most at ease, the most at peace when I was in a rural setting, whether it was in a farming area or out in the woods. I've just always felt very much like it is in my blood to live that way. So even though I grew up in the city, in a town, I always felt like someday I needed to live in the country. And I always had this heart for agrarian living, almost like it was a calling. And then when I did my ancestry and realized that up until just a couple generations ago, almost all of my ancestors were farmers, you know, that just kind of sealed it, that see, it is in my blood. That is why I've always wanted to do this. So that's one reason. And you know, as I go through my 5 reasons, if you've watched any of these other videos from the other homestead vloggers, you probably noticed that there is a similar thread that runs through all of these families and why they do what they do. And I think that the reason there is so much similarity is because we're maybe kind of cut out of similar cloth. About 1.5 years or so ago, I went to a little meetup in Tennessee and met the Rhodes family, who was doing the All-American Farm Tour. And I have to tell you, even though when I got there, I had never met any of these people before in my life, it almost felt like I was at a family reunion, because making these connections with people who have similar interests and similar values and mindsets about things, it was like I'd found my people, you know. I felt so at ease with all of these complete strangers. So much so I barely even got a chance to meet the Rhodes family, which was why I was there to begin with. It was just a wonderful experience. So while the families are all different and we all have different backgrounds and things like that, there is a like-mindedness in a way that does kind of seem to run through all of us. And so I'm sure you'll see that a lot of our reasons are very, very similar. So reason number 2 is our food chain. Knowing where my food is coming from, knowing what is in my food. Our culture is very disconnected from their food. A lot of people don't know where their food comes from, they don't know how it's raised, they don't know how it's grown, they don't know what's in it, how it's treated. So having a closer connection to the food that I put in my body and I feed my family it's important to me. I want to know that, you know, my apple has not been sprayed with toxic chemicals. I want to know that the hamburger that I'm eating doesn't come from a cow that was living in wretched conditions. And so having a closer connection to my food, to me, is important. Kind of with that goes a little bit of a sense of security. Now, I can tell you, doesn't matter what I do, I can't make the rain fall. I can't make the sun shine. So there's always going to be things that are out of your hands and that you just have to trust God for. But having the ability to say, know how to grow some tomatoes, know how to grow some beans, there's a little bit of a sense of security that gives you, to know that you have the ability, that you have the means to grow things to help sustain your family. Another great reason for living this way is that sense of fulfillment that you get when you have a big old basket full of tomatoes, and you can take those tomatoes in the house and you can process them into tomato sauce or diced tomatoes in the jar. Just having that pantry full of things that you grew and that you put up is just very fulfilling. There's just nothing like it. You know, making the jellies that the family enjoys, or even having the ability to give those things as gifts. I can't tell you how nuts people go when I give them a jar of homemade strawberry jalapeno jam. You know, they love that. It's things that Grandma used to do, and when Grandma's not around anymore, those homemade things are just such a treasure and such a gift. And I just love that sense of accomplishment in doing that. And then my number 5 that I want to share is the challenge. I like the challenge. I like having to figure out how to do things. You know, what do I need to do to make this soil better? How can I fix that chicken coop to be exactly what I want it to? Sometimes things are a puzzle that you have to figure out. I like that I am constantly learning, I'm constantly growing. That is not something that ever ends. I talk pretty often about how when things go wrong, when you have a homestead, I don't see it as a failure, because things always happen. There's always going to be something that happens. But if you see it as a failure, you're not looking at it the right way. It is a learning opportunity, because everything that happens, there's something that you can learn from it. And I like the challenge of always learning, always growing, always finding something else to figure out. So those are the 5 reasons that I wanted to share with you today about why I choose to be a homesteader. And if you would like to participate in this, please feel free to just go ahead and share your 5 as well. And if you do, come back and leave a link to your video in the comments down below. So that's it, you guys. That's my video for today. Thanks for watching. My name is Constance. This is Cosmopolitan Cornbread. And until next time, love and blessings.